This is my new phone, and I'm being told the quality of the video is a lot higher than my older phone that I had, which was actually a new phone when I started YouTube in 22. It was a 21 model Motorola Galaxy something. I'm not a techno person. This is a Pixel 10. I don't know who makes it, but anyway, I have a box. This is a Google Pixel 10 Pro. That's what I have now. And the wife's saying the quality of the video is better. So give us a minute here, see if I get a couple of people that are bored out of their skull, and we will move forward. Got the sun setting, that kind of helps. I've been cheating a little bit. An hour after sunrise and the hour before sunset's called the golden hour. It makes everything look better. Yeah, this looks pretty awesome as far as I'm concerned. Looking back over my shoulder here at the sun. Yeah, we got a ways for that to go. Doodle-doo. Still nobody. Whoa, pick a lane there, dude. Pick a lane. This is my new phone, by the way. My old phone gave up the ghost. It was a Motorola Galaxy something. And this is a, let me see the box here. This is a Google Pixel 10 Pro. And I am told, Brianna Jones, hey, how you doing? This is my new setup. Oh, I'm fantastic. I'm doing some running right now. I had a load yesterday. I took off out of Peoria, Illinois, and went to a town, I swear it's spelled BIM, West Virginia, way out in the sticks, and I posted some videos from that drive. I got so far off the beaten path, I lost phone reception for about 2.5 hours last night. You have a crush on what? Says I have a crush on what? And this is why I always advocate to having a GPS that's attached to satellite. Because when you get out in the sticks, you have no reception, you're pretty much shot in the rear end. And I was out of phone comms for quite a long time. And when I was going to leave, I have to send my paperwork in on the phone. And then I have to call to say, hey, where do you want me to go from here? Because I can't, I'm in the middle of nowhere. I had to go to the guard shack and get their Wi-Fi and stand next to their guard shack to send my paperwork and to make the phone call to figure out where I'm going. She's an 8-year-old girl, and I'm an 11-year-old girl, and she's my second neighbor. Well, that's kind of cool. It gives you something to do. So I clawed my way out of the mountain, and I posted a couple videos. This was, last night was kind of interesting because my delivery point was a guard shack, and they said, yeah, just it's a single pallet. I go, yeah, just throw it in here. I said, well, the pallet weighs 450 pounds, so I can't just pick it up and throw it in the guard shack. They go, oh, well, you're going to have to take it to the warehouse. I said, okay. And they go, yeah, just go to the warehouse. I said, all right. Never been here. No idea where the warehouse is. He goes, oh, it's about 5 or 6 miles up this road. I'm in a coal mine up in the mountains. I went, oh, well, can I get some directions? He goes, yeah, follow this. And they said at the 5/6 mile mark, you'll see some school buses, which is why they transport workers around this huge piece of real estate, and the warehouse is up there. And she asked me, do I have a radio CB, which I do. And she goes, yeah, go on channel 15. So it's 1 o'clock in the morning, it's dark out. I dial up 15, I start driving, and I'm going up this very rough very muddy, twisty road. Can't read that name, but hi back at you. And I'm hearing this conversation on the radio, and somebody says something like 16, 17 switchback. That's the radio call, and I went, huh. And then I hear 11, 12 up. Okie dokie. What's going on is this road that goes up and down this mountain is so twisty with so many blind turns. They have number plates, and you are announcing on the radio where you are so you don't get in conflict with the people going up. So I joined in on it. And then as I went up the mountain, because it was 6 miles, as I went up the mountain, your radio went from channel 15 to channel 10. I went, all right, channel 10, same conversation. Somebody says 34, 33. That means they're coming down the mountain, and that's where they are right now. And I thought, man, this is kind of cool. So I joined in. And then somebody called out a number and said four-wheeler, which is what I am, which means you're not a big truck. So I added four-wheeler in. And then somebody asked me who I was because they didn't recognize my voice. And I said, oh, I'm bringing parts. And they said, what have you got? So I, being a certified card-carrying smartass, said, oh, I think they're sex toys. And a bunch of people came up on the radio and laughed. He says, yeah, you're going to mix it just fine up here. And they goes, did they warn you about Steve? I don't know who Steve is. And I said, oh, is that the guy? They said, if he's eating something, keep your hands and feet away from his mouth. And that brought a new round of laughter. So it was really a good bunch of guys here at 1:30 in the morning on a twisty, windy road at a coal mine. And I got to the top and pulled up, and they were excited with some kind of hydraulic parts for one of those Caterpillar trucks. You ever seen those gigantic humongous dump trucks? They're like, you could put a house in the bed. I mean, it's just absolutely ridiculous. It was some kind of hydraulic components. They had one of those down. I wouldn't want to guess how much one of those things cost, $20 million. I mean, just insanely large. But that was the part they needed direct, and got unloaded. And when I got out, the van looked like it had been through a war zone because of the grit and the coal and the mud and the rain. It was as nasty as you could get. And if you go on my playlist today or last night, I posted a video of the truck wash. And the guy said, when you get to the bottom of the hill, just go through the truck wash. And I went, all right. And he says, yeah, it's on the right, just drive through it. It's a sensor. Well, watch the video. It's only like 10, 15 seconds long, but that was designed to wash large trucks. It was not designed to wash tiny little vans. So I got swamped by this thing, and I was laughing because I couldn't see. I couldn't see out the front. I couldn't see out the sides. And you're driving over kind of a bumpy surface that's kind of shaking the vehicle. And if I had drifted, and my steering wheel's moving because of the bumps. If I had drifted, a little left, I was hitting the wall, but I couldn't tell because I couldn't see. I mean, I could have had Bigfoot licking the window on the passenger side. He might have been doing it now that I think about it. But had Bigfoot been licking the window, I couldn't have seen it. That's how strong this water was, and it just made me laugh. And I started leaving the mountains, and I went to the town of Beckley, again, clear in West Virginia, and it headed south. And getting to Beckley at 2 in the morning up there in the mountains was an experience because it was as foggy as you couldn't imagine how thick that fog was on a twisty, windy road. So I'm trying to look out the window and trying to look at my satellite GPS to figure if it's going to twist and turn right here in front of my face, because I was going like 20 to 25 miles an hour for the better part of 30 or 40 miles. It took a long time to get out of there. So anyway, today they got me a load in Dublin, Virginia. Just got across the border, and I am shooting up to an area up by Allentown with a single hand-carried crate. Don't have a clue what it is. It's either got to be there tonight before 9, I might make it, or if not, first thing in the morning. And in the meantime, they are bidding on another load for me tomorrow. Already called me a few minutes ago. I got the topic I put on my opener here was called Technology Wins. The Gulf War, that's my generation. And as I said, I flew in the military. I crewed tanks, and then I got into flight school in the military. So I understand tank warfare, and I understand attack helicopter warfare, two things that I habla. And I am listening to some series here on YouTube talking in detail about the Gulf War, and there was a bunch of stuff going on in the background I had no concept for, and it's interesting to listen to. The Soviet military, and remember, the Soviet Union went out of business the tail end of '91, but their theory of warfare was it's us versus them versus us, and as far as military capabilities, we're equal. They just wanted to have more, and they kind of had a World War II style military structure. And the backbone of their ground force is the T-72 tank. They made 50,000 of them, and they export them, and they have warehouses full of them. This is their tank that's going to go head-to-head with whatever we have. And it's just everything's equal in their system. Same with aircraft. Everything is equal, but it's not. And they found out during the Gulf War because the Iraqi army in 1990 was the fourth largest military in the world, equipped exclusively, with rare exceptions, some aircraft, some French aircraft, but they were equipped with Soviet-built hardware, tanks, aircraft, radar, everything, artillery, it's all Soviet. They were taught how to fight by the Soviets. They had Soviet doctrine, and a lot of their higher-ranking people, their pilots and a lot of their tank crews were actually trained by the Soviet military. So the Gulf War, look at that car in front of us. It's like a 60s sports car out of Europe, something kind of weird looking, but that was the closest we ever got to the U.S. military fighting the Soviets. And we were allies in World War II, and the split second the war ended, we kind of became adversaries, the United States and the Soviet Union. And we fought proxy wars. We went back to South Korea in the Korean War, and the Soviets supplied North Korea with weapons and trained some of their pilots, and they officially admitted it in 1995. They actually had Soviet pilots flying North Korean aircraft and fighting Americans, because there were instances where pilots got so close together they could look at each other, and it was it's a white guy looking back at you. It's not an Oriental face. I mean, they admitted that in 1995. So that's a proxy war. They backed the side that's against us. Vietnam, same thing. We backed the South. They backed the North. It's a proxy war. The Afghan War, 79 to 89. We backed the Mujahideen, who fought the Soviet military to a standstill. We go back and forth now we're backing Ukrainians. So that's how we have proxy wars with the Soviets and now the Russians. And that's kind of how that unfolded. But the Iraq War, 91 Gulf War, there was a deadline set. This is 1991. January 15th was the deadline. George Bush, 41, told the North Koreans, the Iraqis, you will pack your bags and leave Kuwait, or you're going to suffer the consequences. You got January 1st. January 15th. January 15th came and went. They didn't leave. So the Iraqis, who had spent 1980 to 1988, good morning, what part of the world are you calling in from? Holy crap, it's 4:45 in the afternoon here in Virginia. If you're wondering, we're on Highway 81 northbound in Virginia. It's over here on the east side, and we're getting ready to leave the state here, I think, pretty soon. So the Iraqi army had fought the Iranians from 1980 to 1988, and they consider themselves battle-hardened from that war. And honestly, the Iran-Iraq war was like two 6-year-olds getting in a fist fight. They accomplished a whole lot of nothing, and the war never went anywhere. They just killed a bunch of each other, and the war stayed in a real small area, so it kind of limited experience. But the Iraqis were convinced that they were tough guys, and the Soviets had them convinced that their equipment is as good as, if not better than, the American-made equipment, and you guys have got the experience, the Americans don't, and there's going to be this big slogging match that's going to go on out in the desert, blah, 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 blah. That's what they had them sold on. And, it didn't happen like that. So January 15th comes and goes, and the Soviets, Australia, 8 o'clock in the morning, oh, right on. I'm back. You're back. Like a bad rash in the middle of summer. Right on. Okay. And they're waiting for something to happen. So you have the Iraqis are equipped with Soviet I am heading, like I said, I took off from Dublin, Virginia, and I'm going to a town, I can't even pronounce it. It's next to Allentown, Pennsylvania. I have one big plastic tub in the back that weighs like 100 pounds. I don't have a clue what it is. If I get it there before 9 o'clock and I might make it, I can drop it tonight. If not, I got to drop it in the morning. So anyway, they've got the North Koreans. Why do I keep saying that? The Iraqi military has Soviet radar, Soviet aircraft, Soviet. Where am I from? I'm from Texas, but this job keeps me over here on the East Coast. I'm going home Monday. Anyway. So they're waiting for something to happen. They've got their command and control center in Baghdad. They have local radar. They have something like 30 smaller radar sites around the borders of their country, waiting for this big coalition airstrike. So they're sitting there staring at the screens, waiting for something to happen. And they have direct communication with all their little outlying radar sites, and it shows they're operational, and they've got landlines and radio comms with them, and they're walking. And one of them turned to red, which means the radar went offline. And they go, quick, call him and find out what's going on. They grab the radio and they call, no response. They pick up the radio, no response. They get on the phone, dead air. And then in the next 30 seconds, all 38 radar stations go offline. That's how the war started. They were like, uh-oh, because if the first thing you want to kill in a war, the enemy, is their communication. That's numero uno. Cut off the comms. Well, every one of their radar sites went offline almost immediately, like in the same 30 seconds, and they're like, this isn't good. And then they get a frantic phone call that the main communications tower in Baghdad just blew up and fell over. Within the same 60-second time frame, a bomb hit the command and control center where the Soviets were standing. It didn't penetrate, but it hit, and it did a bunch of damage. And then another command and control center got hit, and there's nothing. So all they have is more of a local radar, and the local radar is still blank. There's nothing there. And now they're getting panicky because they're getting hit, and they don't know how they're getting hit. And being that I'm an Army guy, how they took out the radar sites around the perimeter is they used the Army Pavlo helicopters, navigated low-level flying for Apache helicopters, and flew them in low, and they said at exactly whatever time they picked, take out these sites. And I've actually seen a video of the first shot of the Gulf War, which was the night vision equipment on an Apache helicopter that came up on one of these radar sites and was looking at it from the distance. And in an attack helicopter, if you're hovering and you fire a missile or a rocket, the aircraft, the sights give off a little wiggle. And this guy's looking at this sight, and there's a dude smoking a cigarette, and then the sight does a little wiggle, which tells you he just pulled the trigger. And the guy smoking the cigarette suddenly stops, and he's like bolts upright, and he's looking in the direction of where that shot was fired. And he turns around and runs back in this building, opens the door, runs in, reaches out, closes the door, and then the missile hits the building and disappears. So they hit, all of these sites were hit within the same 30 or 35 seconds. They all went down at once, and that's how they took those out. The stealth fighter, which the Soviets had heard of but did not believe was real, they thought it was just hokum. The stealth fighter flew over. It was over Baghdad. They couldn't see it on radar, and it was dropping bombs and taking out the tower and the communication sites and stuff. And they theorized, since they didn't know where this was coming from, that there was a strike force coming in, so they launched a bunch of planes, and they went towards the Gulf, because they went on the news and really talked up a beach invasion, which didn't happen. And they launched like a dozen fighter jets, and they could see their fighter jets on the radar screen, and their fighter jets started disappearing one after the next, just poof, 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 gone. And they don't even know why, because there's nobody in the same sky with them. And it turns out they were getting shot down with ancient 1960s Sparrow radar-guided missiles. They were being fired from so far away that they couldn't see the aircraft firing, the F-15s. and the missiles were being guided by AWACS planes, which again were out of range of the radar. And the missile would get really close to the target, and then they would activate its onboard radar. Because if somebody's shooting a radar-guided missile at you, you hear it in your headset, you hear the tone, you hear the lock. It gets quicker and faster, and it gets up close and it slams into you. Well, this thing was basically on top of them before they went active. So like they hear it go, wee, their headset, boom, they're gone. So they didn't have a chance to react or to throw up a jammer or make a radio call or maneuver. They just bang, boom, they lost a handful of planes, and they finally just turned and ran. They didn't know what was causing it. The tank on tank, when that war ended, the tank versus tank kill ratio was, I used to have this number. It was something like 700 to 1. The T-72s were getting destroyed 700 to 1 M1. I don't think a T-72 killed an M1 the entire war. And they thought there was going to be a slogging match out in the desert. It was going to go on for a month or two, and then they were going to negotiate a settlement. And, it was going to be a proper war. Well, it was 100 hours, and the Iraqi military was erased. The Air Force got erased. Some of their aircraft actually ran into Iranian airspace, and the U.S. Navy chased them into Iranian airspace and shot them down, and the Iranians protested. The U.S. Navy said, yeah, we don't really care. And they were landing at Iranian airfields, and the U.S. Navy would fly over and bomb the aircraft on the Iranian airfields, and the Iranians protested again. They said, we recommend you push those aircraft farther away from yours, because we're not going to stop. And that war was over, and the Soviet Union was already in its death throes in 91. This economic system collapsed. The whole socialist communist system, it doesn't work. It never has. But it was in its death throes. And this was kind of the nail in the coffin, because they made a lot of money. The Soviet Union was making money by selling technology, selling weapons. And all those orders that were set up got canceled, because everybody could see that their weapon systems were wildly inferior. And they said, yeah, we don't really have a whole lot of need for your stuff, because it's just you're totally outclassed. They're still using a lot of that same equipment in the Ukraine war. And both sides are taking hits in tanks, but neither side are using tanks properly. And that's one of the things that's going on over there. Is the war is stalemated, it's stagnated in an area. Both sides are dug in deep. Both sides have kill boxes. Both sides have minefields. And what they're doing is they're sending tanks into these kill boxes, and they're just driving around and getting shot up and droned up and blown up, and then they turn and leave. It's just, you're not accomplishing anything, because armor is an offensive weapon. You don't use 3 or 4 of them, you use 50 of them. And you attack your enemy, you lose a few in the attack, but you go through them, and then you just keep on going, and you run 30 or 40 miles into the rear areas and take out their supplies, and then circle up, and then they have to fall back and reposition. That's what tanks are used for. They're not designed to drive around in front of the enemy and just, piecemeal a little this, that. That's why they're, especially the Russians, good God almighty, they've lost something like 7,000 armored vehicles over there. It's crazy. But that was just something, again, I'm listening. I like to listen to these videos going down the road, and I'm learning little tidbits that, the GPS was brand new back then, and that's how we navigated. The Russians still used a compass and a map. They're keeping the World War II mindset alive. And this Ukraine war proves something that I've always said, that when planning for war, everybody uses the last war as a reference point, and the next war is always going to be different. Because, who heard about drones? That's just drones that are, kamikaze drones blowing up tanks and stuff. That's a whole new concept. And drones dropping grenades on people. That's, wow. But I'm out of the military, so I don't have to deal with that stuff. But yeah. But that's what was popping through my head. It started, wow, the screen on this camera looks really, this new phone looks really nice. It's actually somewhat dark outside, but the screen looks better. All right, well, that's what I was going to babble about today. Has anybody got any questions or comments? This is Interstate 81 in Virginia, and we're blasting along. It's 46 degrees outside. I haven't really gone through any towns that I can remember in a while. I still have another 139 miles to go on this road. Uh-oh, my life's away. All right, we're getting out of the comp zone. I'll catch up with you guys later.